So, again, welcome you all. Those who are coming today first, today, yesterday, who are still arriving. It's always a continuous arriving. Yesterday we have a brief introduction where each one shared where they were coming from geographically, externally, inner geography, where we are coming internally. We share a few reflections about the main theme of the retreat, embodiment and relationship in bhakti, and the necessity of practicing bhakti in an embodied way. Many times we were mentioning yesterday, in terms of spirituality, many times we end up practicing something that I call disembodied spirituality, where we try to transcend and go beyond, but we neglect our human side, we neglect emotions, we neglect psychological balance, bodily health. So many things get lost in the way of becoming a divine being. And that was not the original plan. Let's put it that way. Because we belong to a tradition where we are invited to become divine, to be divine, to embrace our divine side, but also to become fully human. In the name of being divine, we don't want to stop being human. We worship Radha and Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Dev. Their lila is Nara lila. In Sanskrit, Nara lila means human lila, human play. Sometimes it is translated human-like. But Nara means human. Human-like may be because it's human and divine. So we want to live in an eternity where there is full divinity and full humanity. We don't want full humanity at the cost. Full divinity, we don't want full divinity at the cost of full humanity. We want an integration, all of this. So Bhakti is that. Bhakti is a tradition which invites us to offer all our faculties to say yes, the Hrishikena Hrishikesh Shivanam Bhakti Ruchati. All mind, senses, body, emotions, everything can become an offering. Everything is offerable. And Krishna's Hrishikesh is he who welcomes all your dimensions, all the aspects of your being. The center is coming. Okay, thank you. Now the circle is complete. We are all sitting in a circle, revolving around the common center, blossoming of the heart with Radha Muralidhar, though they are here in the part of the circle, but also they are the center of the circle. Everything revolves around there. Yeah. So hopefully, through these days in the retreat, we can make of our hearts a beautiful bouquet, like here. Sometimes they make the contrast between a bouquet and a bonsai. Sometimes in the name of spirituality, we may end up bonsaiing ourselves, like not exploring our fullest blossoming potential. So this center is a reminder of all the beautiful bouquet of emotions we can, each flower being a different aspect of our being offered. For the pleasure, not only of Radha Muralidhar, for the pleasure of everything in existence. Because loving God means loving everything. That's an important point. That's part of our, hopefully, main experience these days. No? Loving Krishna, loving Radha and Krishna is not me loving only them and forgetting to love everything else, because everything exists in relationship to Radha and Krishna. So we want to love God, and we want to love everything that exists in connection to God, which is everything. So we have to love everything. God, other Vaishnavas, other people who are not Vaishnavas, including ourselves. That may be the most difficult part. But all has to enter into the equation of love. Love loves everything in every direction. Love is not selective. I only love this, but I won't love that. Real love, it's loving in every possible direction. So embodiment and relationship in bhakti has to do with this. Learning to embody, learning to love, learning to be in relationship with ourselves, with other beings, with everything in creation, with the sacred common center. So, and a good place to begin to talk about this, and we're planning to talk about that yesterday, but I prefer to talk briefly about that yesterday, and today more in detail is about vulnerability. Vulnerability. The title of today's sharing is Sacred Vulnerability, and embodying honesty in our relationships. So we can just stay in with the title and just explore the title. There's so much to say there, right? What's vulnerability? What's sacred vulnerability? And what does it mean to embody honesty in our relationships? Because at the end of the day, we exist in relationship. Again, as I said before, everything is interconnected. Well, everything is in relationship. Whether we are aware of that or not, that's a separate thing. But everything is in relationship. Reality is relational. Reality is in conversation with everything else. Everything is in conversation with everything else. Whether we are listening to the dialogue or not, that's another thing. But spirituality is about awakening to that relationship, to that conversation, to that dialogue that everything is having with everything else. Because again, there's a common center and everything is revolving around that common center. That's the very beginning. That should be the very beginning, in my opinion, of our spiritual education. We call that in Sanskrit sambandha. Sambandha. Bandha means bonded, like tied together, connected, and sam means everything. So in our tradition, we have sambandha, videya, and prayojan, sometimes translated as theory, practice, result. So sambandha is the theory. So what's the theory? Sambandha. Everything is connected with everything else. That's the foundational basis that we need to learn to practice avideya and to reach prayojan, the fruit of the practice. To practice from a place of interconnectedness. Because again, if I do not start with that right idea in place, I practice from a very isolated place, from very fragmented, divided, dualistic. No. Only me, only us and them. There's always someone else on the other side. All those demons, atheists, non-devotees. I don't like that word, non-devotee. How much of a devotee am I to begin with? The atheist, how much I'm not yet still a functional atheist? How do I still do not function as an atheist on a daily basis sometimes? Not fully trusting that Krishna exists, not fully taking shelter. Those impersonalists, how much of an impersonalist I'm not yet myself? Treating other people in not as personally as I could, treating myself as personally as I could. When we fail in that, it's a form of impersonalism. It's a more tricky one because it's disguised impersonalism. I'm personalist. I'm a Gaudiya Vaishnava. I may relate very poorly, very impersonally with other people. So we need to see these things for what they are, basically. So today we want to explore what it means to exist in relationship, in community. A retreat is kind of an experience of living in community, supporting each other, which is how we want to spend eternity. Right? Our idea of eternity is not I reach a spiritual bubble and I'm just by myself there. There's nobody else disturbing me. I don't have to deal with relationships with people. It's just me in bliss. No, it's full communal experience. It's not even me and Krishna in a bubble and everyone else. Go to your own bubble. But we want an eternal experience of community life. As we said yesterday, it all begins here and now or nowhere at all. It's not that I'm totally disconnected from relationship and community and connection and embodiment and dysfunctional, and suddenly I'm transferred to Golok Vrindavan and I'm fully functional in relationship, and it doesn't work like that. We will get there if we get there here, right? Because we will only get there if we want to get there. We have to choose. It's a voluntary action. It's not that we will be dragged by force against our will to a place that we don't want to go. Krishna is not that cruel, right? So we will go into a place where we're choosing to go with every single choice of how we live our lives in a day-to-day. So hopefully we can have an experience of that these days, an experience of what it means to belong to something greater than ourselves. That's what all of us are longing for. We are longing for belonging, to make a play of words, and to belong to something bigger than ourselves. To belong to, in Sanskrit we have this word sangha, collective, a community, like-minded people, sadhu sangha, sat sangha. But again, to belong to in relationship requires honesty. Because you can only remember Brené Brown. Some of you may have heard about Brené Brown. Okay, some of you are smiling when I say her name. So it seems it means you like her. So she will say, your level of belonging can only happen as much as you show yourself for who you are. So therefore you need to be honest. So your level of belonging is equal to your level of honesty, of vulnerability, as we will be talking today. Vulnerability means to show myself for who am I. And of course that could be scary. We were talking about that yesterday also. We cannot demand vulnerability. I cannot tell you now, be fully vulnerable. Come on guys, what's going on? More vulnerability. You are not vulnerable enough. That's not the way to do it. We will only be vulnerable if we feel safe enough to be vulnerable. So the prerequisite to vulnerability is creating safe space. And the safe space has to be created in such a genuine way that everyone feels it for themselves. As I said yesterday, I cannot even tell you, you are in a safe space. I cannot decide that for you. That's your own decision. That's your own experience. And only when you feel safe, I can be vulnerable. But it's important to be vulnerable. So what can we do to get there? And it's important that we understand that these beautiful words that we use in our tradition, like sadhu sangha or satsanga, they all actually speak about vulnerability and honesty. Sadhu sangha, that's a beautiful word. And I like to many times explain it, because sometimes we hear the word sadhu and we put the bar too high. So what's a sadhu? And once I remember I asked some of the books, what's a sadhu? Who is a sadhu? Some started, a pure devotee. Oh, that's a high bar. Someone then went beyond that. It became kind of a competition, like eternally liberated soul. Wow. So basically, there's no hope for anyone. In other words, to be a sadhu, because the bar is over there. Now, if you go to how Krishna himself defines who is a sadhu for him, which I think we should take it seriously. What's Krishna's own opinion? How he defines who is a sadhu? We can go to the Bhagavad-gītā, and he gives a very interesting definition. He uses the sadhu a few times in the Gita. And then you get to probably the most controversial verse of the Bhagavad-gītā, which happens to be Krishna's definition of who is a sadhu, which is controversial because in one sense goes against our ideas of what's a sadhu. Because we have all these perfectionist ideas. A sadhu should be this and this. So for me to be a sadhu, I need to be basically a canonized saint, perfect from tip to toe. But Krishna says something very different in the Bhagavad-gītā. Chapter 9, verse 30, for those of you who do not believe me. Krishna says, Apichet suduracharu bhajante mamananya bhak sadhur eva samantavya samyak vyabhyasatu hisa. Sometimes we think, okay, sadhu is only one who behaves perfectly, who has perfect achar, behavior. An acharya is someone who teaches by example, which of course that person is a sadhu. Here Krishna is saying, Apichet suduracharo. He's not saying achar, he's saying durachar. Durachar means bad behavior, not very good behavior. And not only is it durachar, it's apichet suduracharo, very bad behavior. So he says, even if apichet, even if still you are a mess, basically, let's make the contemporary translation of the verse. Even if still you're a considerable mess, apichet sudraja bhajante mam ananyabhak, but you are sincerely, honestly wishing to dedicate your life exclusively to me. No? So he creates this contrast, first to last. First, you are a mess, but you are very honest about the mess you are and about how much you want to give yourself to me, even as a mess, as messy as you are. If that's the equation, sadhureva samantavya, Krishna said. In my opinion, that person is a sadhu. Why? Samyak yabhyasita hisa. Because that person is properly situated in his or her determination, intention. So I'm a mess, but I want to love Krishna. I want to give my heart honesty to the sweet absolute. But you are a mess, yes. And I want to offer that mess as part of my dedication. It's what I have. I have to begin somewhere. That's Krishna says that in the Gita. Artha jignasura artha jnanicha. You have desire for money, you have desire for fame, for relief of suffering, for whatever you approach me. But my approach is very still selfish. No problem, come. We have to begin somewhere. No? Bhagavatam says the same thing. Akama sarva kama moksha kama dharani. Whether you have all the desires in the world, whether you have no desires at all, whether you only have one desire, I want to get out of this world. Whatever you are on the journey, just come to me. Krishna is not saying, first become perfect, then send me a WhatsApp message and I will show up. I'll see, let's see. No, that's not the God we worship. So Krishna is saying in this verse of the Bhagavad-gītā, even if you still are utterly imperfect, but are very honest, very sincere about where you are and where you want to be, in my eyes, you are already a sadhu, Krishna says. So we cannot argue against him. We're going to say, no, you're wrong, Krishna. Sadhu is only this and this. Those are our own perfectionistic, traumatized ideas of what it means to be a practitioner. So that's a very interesting definition. Sadhu, sat. Sadhu comes from the Sanskrit sat. Sat means that what is true, that what is real. To be real, to be a real person, to be honest. Sat. Srila Prabhupada will translate satam, which is another word for sadhu, as utterly honest person. So sadhu sangha. Sadhu means honest. It doesn't mean perfect. It means honest. Many times the honesty starts in honestly acknowledging your imperfection. That's how you begin your journey to perfection. And sangha in Sanskrit also means, Krishna in the Gita mostly uses the word sangha as attachment. So sadhu sangha can mean attachment to honesty. That's what sadhu sangha means. This sadhu sangha, we are getting together, so we attach develop an attachment to be honest as much as we can in our relationships with one another. That's sadhusanga. It's not just a casual Sunday religious meeting, as I said yesterday, where we put our best religious mask to be perfect in the church, so to say. All the family dresses in their best suit to go to the church, to look perfect to the rest of the neighborhood. So nobody sees the cracks in between. Everything is nice makeup, covering all the crackings, please. Go to church, look perfect, go back quickly home before everyone starts to notice what's happening. And the tragedy is that every single other person is doing the same. So that was not the original intention of why a church or a temple is built. It's not like an embodiment of hypocrisy. Let's get together it's a mask festival. That was not the idea. Let's get together to be as honest with one another, as vulnerable, as transparent. And let's create a safe space to hold that messiness or that brokenness and to make that sacred in its own way. So those are ways of showing affection with one another. Rupa Goswami, when he describes sadhusanga in Upadeshamrita, he speaks about priti lakshana, these loving exchanges between devotees. He says, Guhyam akyati prichati, reveal your mind in confidence. That basically means be utterly honest and be vulnerable and learn to receive. If you are the one who is being that, learn to be that. And if you're the one who is receiving that from someone else, learn to be a proper receiver of other people's vulnerability. That requires work. It's not that I press a button and I'm a perfect receiver of vulnerability. One needs to develop, as we will be talking these days, quality of listening, presence, empathy, of non-judgmentalism, of not becoming too quickly labeling people and putting them in boxes, being too anxious about telling people what to do with their lives, and to stay in spaces of silence and even uncertainty. It's fine. It's okay to go there. So that's basically how I personally see sadhusanga. Because if not, again, we can end up using the word, but the word is not conveying the experience that it should convey. No. You can say sadhusanga, but in practice that can, as I say, become a mask of a festival of masks, basically. That's not sadhusanga. The same with every word we can use. We have to use the words that convey an experience, a healthy experience, a healing experience. So as we were talking yesterday, the invitation these days is how we can together create safe space so everyone feels naturally comfortable enough to be who they are. And if some of us, just in case you brought in your luggage some emergency masks, because you don't know where you're going, maybe I need to put some masks to perform and to make a show of being a nice, perfect devotee, or who knows what. Hopefully we can relate with so much sincerity and openness. We can leave those marks in the luggage. We can learn to accept each other for who we are, not for who we want others to think we are. Hopefully we can take some rest from that. It's so exhausting to live a life when we're trying to show the world some of who we are not. That's exhausting. So hopefully you can take this retreat can be also a restoration space to take rest from the exhausting time that sometimes we spend playing masking, even in a religious setting. Many times, especially in spiritual religious setting, that's where we have the biggest closet of masks. Because those are spiritual masks. So those look legal, look transcendental, look spiritual, but still it can be a way of hiding, a way of not being fully willing to be seen for who we are. And of course, I'm not saying any of that for anyone to feel guilt or shame, like, oh, Maharaj, you're saying all that. You're without mentioning my name, you're telling my unauthorized biography. First of all, if you are thinking that, I assure you, you are not the only one thinking that in this moment. Because I'm seeing your faces and I can see who is thinking that, basically. And all of us, to some degree or another, are on the same journey. So again, let's not isolate ourselves as, oh, only I am going through that. We're all going. It's not your problem, it's our problem. So that in itself creates sangha, creates community to realize, oh, I'm not the only one going through that. And there's no need to feel, to chastise ourselves. Why I'm not vulnerable enough? Why I'm so afraid of showing for who I am? Because many times we have tried to show ourselves for who we are and it didn't work. There was rejection, and there was abuse, and there was judging and labeling. So naturally, we may think, okay, it doesn't work like that. I'm supposed the game is played with another rules. I'm supposed to wear this mask and to wear this mask. So it's understandable. Well, let's have some self-compassion also. But also let's have the understanding that we need to hopefully learn to be vulnerable in a way that is empowering. Because again, vulnerability without safe space, vulnerability without proper boundaries, that can end up in abuse. That can end up in so many traumatizing experiences. We don't want that. We already may have enough of that. But that doesn't mean that we have to reject vulnerability altogether. So how to be vulnerable in a way that is empowering? How to present myself as honestly as possible in an environment where that honesty is what creates the connection with other people. Like, for example, something that comes to my mind is these meetings of AA, I don't know how they call it here, Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So I'm not accusing anyone here of being an alcoholic, but even if you are, I mean, we are all addicted to something. We are not addicted to substances, at least we are addicted to our way of thinking. So we all have some addiction problems. And sometimes this meeting starts in that way. Someone starts and say, okay, my name is whatever, Robert, and I have a problem of addiction with alcohol. And that honesty and messiness is what gives him the entrance to the group, right? I remember one Christian elder friend of mine, he's psychologist also, and he will work sometimes in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he told a story, a very interesting one. Once they were sitting in a circle, and they were welcoming a new member to the circle. So they were sitting in a circle, and there was a chair in the middle. Instead of a bouquet, there was a chair. A little bit more intimidating, right? Imagine if we are here now and we put a chair there, everyone will be like, who will go there? Hopefully not me. Anyhow, so this new member came and they invited him to sit in the chair in the center. So they invite him to introduce himself. So he said, okay, my name is this. Okay. And they asked him, what's the most important thing? I mean, he was someone who came with an addiction problem, I think, to alcohol. But he didn't say that yet. He said, my name is whatever, John. So then in the group, the leader said, so what's the most important thing in your life? So the person said, my family. So everyone in the circle, and I will say a bad word here, so excuse me for that. Everyone in the circle starts saying bullshit, 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 at full volume. So the person was in shock. So again, the leader said, what's the most important thing in your life? Okay, my family didn't work, so he's saying my job, or my whatever he said. Everyone started to say again the BS word. Welcome to the group. But eventually he realized which was it. So one more time the leader asked, what's the most important thing in your life? And he said, alcohol. You're welcome. And everyone raised and everyone started to embrace him and to welcome him, right? You follow the point? So the idea was like, be honest. If you have a problem of addiction with this is the most important thing for you. You don't want that to be the most important thing, but it is. So until and unless you're honest about that, you cannot enter the group because the price is to be honest, right? So it's important that in the name of Sadhu Sangha, we are all honest with ourselves again, because that's the meaning of Sadhu Sangha. Getting together to get attached, to be honest with one another. I'm Swami Padmanabha. I'm a human being, work in progress in the Human Being Project, in deep need of grace. I'm in need of grace. I'm in need of help. I'm in work in progress. I don't have the need to say I'm a pure devotee, self-realized, descending from Golok Vrindavan, whatever. No, that would be not true. So in this way, trying to introduce ourselves in a way that is realistic. We don't want to cheat ourselves and we don't want to deceive ourselves in the name of God, in the name of Bhakti, in the name of the most sacred. We don't want to use the most sacred to create a mask out of that. That's the greatest disservice. So let's not do that. So vulnerability is an important point. It's an important beginning point. And in my second book called Radical Personalism, some of you know the book, some of you probably are here because of the book from what I heard yesterday. And the last part of the book has 3 parts. The last part are 7 chapters, like trying to emphasize the main themes of the book. And the first chapter is vulnerability, because I felt it all starts there. It starts with creating a safe space, but with being vulnerable. Because if I'm not being vulnerable, if I'm not showing up for who I am, then we started with the wrong foot, so to say. Like Srila Prabhupada will say, you're adding numbers and you add the first 2 numbers wrong, no matter how correctly you add the rest of the numbers, the end result will be wrong. So if you start thinking, I don't need to be vulnerable, I don't need to be honest, I don't need to show myself for who I am, no matter how you try to organize all your life in the most perfect way, after that, it won't work. So it's preliminary, it's very important. And again, it's unsettling. I know, let's be honest, it's unsettling. It's not like speaking of vulnerabilities. Like I remember, again, going back to Brene Brown, she will tell it when she's traveling and some people, the people who do not know who she is will ask her, oh, and in a flight, like typical casual conversation that happens to me a lot. Like, well, who are you? Of course, they see me like this. They have a glimpse, but still they're curious. Like, so what do you do with your life? So she says that when they ask her, what do you do? I'm a shame researcher and specialist in vulnerability. Most people is like, okay. And they start to talk to the person on the other side. That's like scary, like vulnerability, shame research. We don't want to go there, Gerald. It doesn't feel like the most glorious place to visit. It's a very necessary one. So again, being vulnerable means showing yourself for who you are. Well, we do not, as I mentioned in my book, we do not do vulnerability. We are vulnerable. So the thing is whether you acknowledge that or not. That's the only choice. It's not to be vulnerable or not to be, following Shakespeare. We are vulnerable. And it's not a bad word, because sometimes in our collective unconscious, we associate vulnerability with weakness, for example. But it's the opposite of that. If properly expressed in a safe space, vulnerability becomes the source of all empowerment. If I show myself for who I am, in a safe space, and I'm being seen, and I'm being received, and I'm being honored and loved and listened. That's so empowering. So there's a very deep connection between vulnerability and empowerment. Vulnerability and empowerment. There is a beauty in fragility. Let's put it that way. That's why most of us love babies, for example. Now I'm giving this lecture, but imagine someone brings a 2-week baby, my class is over. I lost all of you in 1 second. You are gone somewhere else, right? Let's be honest. I'm not taking it personal, no problem. Not about me and my class, it's just that something captivating, very all attractive, so to say, enter the room. But have you ever wondered why we are so attracted to babies, for example? Because if a non-baby enters, right? If a human being enters, but it's not a baby, we are not so captivated any longer. Not that much. But with the babies, like, boom. Why? Because in one sense, the baby is so vulnerable, so fragile. It's very clear. So there's beauty in that. And the baby is not trying to fake it. That's the important thing. Baby hasn't learned yet the human masking procedure, which sometimes we take as what it means to be an adult, quote unquote. So they are totally unfiltered vulnerability. And we are all like, wow, captured by that. Because unconsciously we long for that. We felt, oh, that I lost that somehow. So whenever that comes, it's a reminder, so beautiful, so attractive, even if we are not conscious why we are attracted to that. But vulnerability is attractive. It creates relatability. If it's too invulnerable, it's boring. In my book, I refer to the example of in the United States, and I'm sure probably you have your own Swiss version here, Superman. You know Superman? Okay, he's world famous. So it's what, boring?
Boring, Superman.
Yes, so I'm going there actually. Because when the whole series began, a few thousands of years ago, in the beginning, Superman was literally Superman. Means nothing could kill him, nothing could harm him, nothing could weaken him. He was all powerful in every sense. So after a few weeks of publishing the series, people started to stop reading it because it was totally unrelatable. There's no vulnerability, right? No weakness, no, it's not a human. Superman, I cannot relate to that guy. So all the reading dropped. So the people from the series thought like what to do, or how to keep the readers engaged. So they included something that could potentially kill Superman, kryptonite. The vulnerability enters into the picture now. Oh, this can weaken him or potentially kill him. All the readers started to get interested again. Okay, now this makes sense. I can relate to that. If not, it's not attractive. It's too powerful, too boring. But there is a beauty. There is a beauty in vulnerability, but we have to learn to appreciate vulnerability in its real glory. Because if not, we are ashamed to acknowledge our fragility, our vulnerability. In the Bible, you have this very clear image in Genesis, in the Bible narrative of creation. Adam and Eve are naked. Naked means vulnerable. And they're not aware of that, but when they gain awareness of that, the first thing they do is to cover, mask. And then what they do? They hide. Interestingly. They're deeply ashamed of who they are, basically. And then they try to, again, wear something, put some mask, and try to, as we talked yesterday, to fit in. Not to belong. And these two words are important, at least for me. And especially the two are important because many times we make the mistake of using the two words interchangeably as if they mean the same thing. Belonging and fitting in. They're exact opposites. Right? Because in order to belong, you have to remain who you are. In order to fit in, you have to stop being who you are and become something else. With some mask, become a character. But you can only have the experience of belonging by showing up who you are. So Krishna says that in the Bhagavad-gītā beautifully in chapter 3. Of course, he may not be using this wording, but the message is the same. He says to Arjuna, you better discharge your duty imperfectly than do someone else's duty perfectly. He's basically saying, I don't care for your perfection. I care for you being you. But I'm imperfect. I don't care. I prefer the imperfect you than the perfect someone else. So to say, you are you. You cannot be someone else. And that's the thing, an ongoing temptation, comparing ourselves to others. As they say, the grass seems greener on the other side of the fence. But you go on the other side of the fence and you realize everyone is struggling with the same stuff. We tend to project, to idealize, to over-idealize. Sometimes we even get drawn to people that we worship, but just by over-idealization, actually. There may not be a genuine intention of knowing the person, but we want the person to be a rock star, so to say, in our life, even a spiritual rock star. Instead of someone who can compassionately reflect back, mirror back my own messiness, my own brokenness, as they may have it also. It doesn't mean that a spiritual leader doesn't have any of that. Unfortunately, sometimes in some spiritual circles, it kind of becomes a standard. Or you are a spiritual leader, you are not supposed to show that. You have to be perfect for the crowd to inspire their faith. But for me, it's like, that's not inspiring anyone's faith. I'm cheating them. No? If I just enter here to make it to be a superhero, and if that inspires your faith, what type of faith is that? A faith that only wants me to be perfect? So what happens when I'm not perfect? You follow my point? It's very conditional. As long as you're perfect, you inspire me. When I see the first little crack, oof, everything collapses. That's very superficial. That's not real. We want real connection with people. We want to learn to love each other unconditionally. As Krishna is loving us unconditionally. Because if I only love you, if you only inspire me when you are perfect, when will that happen? That's very simple. Of course, it's easy, quote unquote, easy to love someone because that person is perfect. But to love someone in their imperfection, that's a real challenge. That's a real invitation. So vulnerability, we are invited to embrace it deeply because our own, in his own way, God is vulnerable. Krishna is very vulnerable to love. Wow, someone is having some adventure there. For example, vulnerability, you can relate vulnerability to be in a situation of necessity. Imagine, I don't know, Sri Chaitanya, Krishna himself in the mood of Sri Radha, saying in 7th verse of Shikshastakam, Jugaitam nimishana chakshusa parisaitam sunjaitam jagat sarvam govinda virahenam. Saying, without you, oh my beloved, the whole universe is empty. One moment feels like an age, I'm in desperate need of meeting. That's vulnerable. It's not that Mahaprabhu is like, oh, I'm fine, I'm cool, I don't need anything. I have no need to be vulnerable. He's deeply vulnerable, crying from a different place. We are not comparing ourselves, but there, my point is, there is vulnerability in the higher realm. So we need to learn how to be vulnerable without imitating that vulnerability, but asking ourselves, what's the corresponding form of vulnerability for me today, here and now? How to be sincere. No, that's another word for vulnerability, sincerity. Maybe you know the origin of the term sincere. It's very interesting. Because we hear sincere, but we may ask, so what it means to be sincere? Where it begins. So the term sincere comes from the Latin sincera, which is like in Spanish, sincera also will say sincera, sincero, it's like sincere. And it comes from the time where they have these markets where they will sell big blocks of marble for people to carve, sculpt. So you have in the market a group where they will sell the big blocks of marble, but they will have cracks. So there was one group in the market who will cover the cracks with wax. Wax, you understand wax? Yeah. Which in Latin is said cera. And there was another group in the market who will sell the marble blocks with the cracks. You could see that. And you could work integrating the cracks, making the crack part of the piece of art. So those who are more honest in the market will show the marble block and say, without wax, sin cera. Sin means without, cera means wax. So it will say, sin cera. No. So these are the crackings. Acknowledge the cracking. Don't put makeup on the cracking. Don't put a mask on the cracking. And do your piece of art without rejecting the cracking, but making it part of it. That's a good place to begin to define what does it mean to be sincere. Here I am with my crackings. I don't need to. Again, we need safe space to do that, but we need to do that. And that can become a part of our story, our journey, and that's glorious. Like in Japan, they have this art called kintsugi. Have you heard about it? That's beautiful. Which is related to mostly pottery. So you have pottery at home, whatever, let's say this or this. And if at home some of this fell and breaks, generally we will throw that away, right? It's broken. We don't want people to see at home anything broken. It has to be perfect always. In Japan, they will disagree with this. They will pick all the broken pieces, put them together, and put liquid gold to fill in all the broken parts. So not only they are not hiding the brokenness, they're highlighting it. Like implying, now this pot has a story to tell. That's interesting. Symbol of vulnerability. But now it's a piece of art. It's very deeply appreciated in Japanese culture. Like, okay. They will even kind of like bow to the gold-filled pottery. It's broken, but it's filled with gold. The most valuable possible things you pour on what seems to be the most ordinary thing. And that becomes extraordinary. So again, there's nothing bad with vulnerability. Our God is fully vulnerable. We have sometimes God is in English, is called the Almighty, the all-powerful. Yes, but also the all-vulnerable. You have to put both in the equation. It's not that Krishna is only all-powerful. Sometimes he's dying in separation from Radha. Sometimes, many times, on a daily basis. So we have to identify with that dimension of God as all vulnerable, because for us in our tradition, our eternal service will be to tend to God's vulnerability, to assist Radha and Krishna where they are dying in separation from each other. We have to be there to give support, to give hope, to make arrangement, to empathize with their vulnerability. So that's why we need to be trained here and now in what this vulnerability is all about, because there's lots of vulnerability waiting for us in the eternal realm. And again, a good place to start to create this safe space, this safety is, we are already, this is an important point for me, and I repeated it many times, and last year we did a presentation in Ramananda's house on this, that you are already loved by God. You are unconditionally loved by the divine. In all your imperfection, so to say, in all your, whatever, all those things that you think make yourself unlovable, Krishna is loving you despite all that. So the more we enter into this space of and acknowledging, I'm the beloved of God. That's my identity. That's how you can define yourself. Who are you? I'm a beloved of Krishna. But we have to really believe it. Because I can tell you, but you may be like, no, you are worthless. You're not beloved of Krishna. You're this, you're that, all this crowd inside. We need gradually to put that into place and realize what is what. So that's why we put so many masks. No? Because we have somehow been bobbed into this narrative that in order to be loved, in order to be accepted, even sometimes in spiritual circles, unfortunately, I have to be perfect. I have to be whatever you fill in the line with. I have to be. If it starts with I have to be, it's a problem already. There's some conditions in the contract. No? For you to be loved, no, wrongly stated. You are already loved by Krishna. So there's nothing you need to do to be loved, because you're already loved. There's nothing we need to do to deserve love, to earn love. It's not a spiritual practice about earning Krishna's love. Be careful of practicing from that place. That's exhausting. It means like until and unless I become this exalted personality, Krishna doesn't care for me. That doesn't speak so nicely about Krishna. Indirectly, we are insulting God by saying that. And we are depriving ourselves of the joy of knowing I already belong. I already am embraced and accepted by the divine. So the more we understand that, the less masks we need to wear. I don't need to wear any mask at the end of the day, because Krishna already accepted me for who I am. So from that place, I of course try to give back love to him. It's not so much what should I do to be loved by Krishna? No, that's already happening. What can I do to return the embrace? That's the only question that remains now. So at that point, there is no need of hiding. There is no need of, I don't need to impress Krishna, because he sees me for who I am. I mean, I cannot deceive him. No matter how many religious masks do I wear. Krishna has a laser eye. So he pierces through all this masking and sees me for who I am and loves me on top of that. Which should give us lots of hope. First of all, I don't need to wear mask. I don't need to impress God. I don't need to make a show of performance. And despite all my messiness and being loved, wow, what to do with all that? We have this famous example in our tradition of when Draupadi is being disrobed in the assembly of the Kurus. The Kurus are trying to take out her sari, humiliate her publicly. And in the beginning, she's Of course, she's unwilling for that to happen. It makes total sense. And with one hand, with the two hands, she's trying to keep the sari, but it's not working. With one hand, she starts to call Krishna, but with the other one, she still tries to control the situation. It's not working. And at the end, she puts the two hands and calls Govinda. And now Govinda appears and gives unlimited sari. So the teaching, also taking it to a more symbolic level, is you are being naked, you're in this robe, undressed, you don't want to be seen naked, we want to keep the mask. That's a reading of the story. And when situations throw us in a place of full nakedness, we have to be willing to be seen for who we are, trusting Krishna is providing whatever we need. Yeah, that's very beautiful. There is a copy of Radical Personalism there in the table. Can I ask you 1 second, please?
Die farbige Buch.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to read one line from, again, going back to Brené Brown, because that's how I begin the chapter here on vulnerability.
Devotees, if you want books, there's not so many available, just so you know.
Okay. So Brené Brown, I begin the chapter on vulnerability and empowerment, quoting Brené Brown, and she says, vulnerability is not winning or losing. Vulnerability is having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. That's powerful. So vulnerability means to have the courage to show up and be seen when you don't have a control over the outcome. Again, there has to be some safety before that, because if not, you will be paralyzed. You won't go there. Follow my point? But if you feel there is some safety, like there's some trust built with some other person, okay, I will show up for who I am. I don't know what will happen, but there's enough trust, there's enough safety for me to jump into the unsafe in one way. In our tradition, we have a very interesting story in this regard, which is the Gopi Vastra Harana Lila, which is when Krishna is still in the clothes of the gopis. So that can be read very much in these lines of nakedness, vulnerability, showing up for who we are. As we know, the gopis are bathing in the river Jamuna, celebrating successful engagement with a sacrifice for them to obtain Krishna as their husband, basically. They are celebrating the Jamuna, but all their clothes are outside the river. And Krishna takes all the clothes, goes high to the top of a branch, where the gopis are in the water, celebrating, playing. Krishna is like, and all the gopis are like, and Krishna is with the cloth of the gopis. The gopis who were without clothes, they go down the water, and it was winter in Vrindavan, it's pretty cold, and they are like, Krishna gave us back the clothes. Krishna says, yes, of course, no problem. I'm here waiting for you, come to pick them. No. Yes. Krishna's like, so the gopis are naked. Again, try to follow the parallel of what we were talking about. Krishna wants to see full nakedness of the gopis, like implying he wants to see us fully transparent, fully vulnerable, not hiding. So the gopis gradually leave the Yamuna and go up to where Krishna is, but they are covering their intimate parts, one hand, two hands. Not full nakedness, right? Again, going back to Adam and Eve, covering, masking, hiding. I'm not saying they are doing that. That's a symbol for us to learn our lesson, how we can read that lila in a way that speaks to us. And Krishna is seeing them still covering. Krishna wants to see the full nakedness. Again, not as in a degraded physical way, but full transparency, full honesty. So Krishna tells the gopis, says, you have offended the Yamuna by bathing their naked. So now you have to beg forgiveness to the Yamuna. The only way to do that is you have to put your 2 hands on top of your head and bow to the Yamuna. The 2 hands were covering the Prophet. So Krishna is a tricky guy. But the point was there, like still you are hiding. Still you are coming to me calculating, not showing all that you are. So when they did that, okay, Krishna gave them back the clothes and they reached the fulfillment of their wishes in connection to him. And so that's a teaching for us. He already sees us in our nakedness, but we still keep hiding and masking and going. And he's it's not required. I'm seeing beyond all that. Don't lose so much time and exhaust yourself trying to put one mask on top of the other. So that's the willingness of the gopis. Again, in our particular tradition, we're going back to Brené Brown's definition of vulnerability. Remember, she said, having the courage to show up when you don't have the control over the outcome. That's what happens every single night Krishna plays the flute. Every single night Krishna plays the flute. That's where the gopis are from. They receive an invitation to show up. But in order to show up, they have to go through so many obstacles. And they don't know what will they meet after the sound. They don't have a control over the outcome. It's not that Krishna plays the flute and they know we will get there, we'll meet Krishna, we will have Rasa Leela all night. There's no warranty that will happen. But they are willing to risk all for that. So that's a definition of vulnerability. Vulnerability always entails some sense of risk-taking. So that's why it's courageous. It's not weakness, it's courage. But again, you can only take that risk when there is enough trust built first, enough safety. You follow my point? So the gopis love Krishna. The gopis know Krishna, who he is, how loving he is. So in the context of that, they risk, they run, they try to meet him without knowing if they will meet, but they have this foundation of love and trust. So I'm trying to put that in place because if not, too much emphasis on vulnerability can paralyze us if we don't have enough safety and trust. When there's enough safety and trust, we can risk, we can jump into the uncertain. We can trust what we don't know, basically. There's one Christian author, mystic, Henry Nouwen, he will say, God loves you unconditionally. That's the only certainty. Everything else is uncertain. But if you have that certainty in place, you can deal with everything else being uncertain, no problem. But if you don't have that certainty in place, everything else becomes too much. But when we are deeply rooted and we are being loved by the divine, then we can deal with the rest of reality being uncertain. Because it's really uncertain. Sometimes we think it's not in our daily plans and this will happen. But if you look back to how was your last year, how you planned your last year to be, generally it's very different from how you plan. So in that sense, it's uncertain. And it's okay, it's not a problem. But we need to have a deeply rooted conviction and trust and faith. So we can dare to take these bold steps that, for example, Radha and the gopis take. They're fearless. There's an ongoing running behind Krishna's flute call. Again, Krishna plays his flute every single night from a different direction. It's not that every day is predictable. Oh yeah, he will call that from there. You don't know. And they may get to Krishna and Krishna will say, go back to your home. What are you doing? It's too late. You are married girls. What are you doing with a single guy like me? What will that village think of us? You should go back. So that's, well, that was not in the plan. Krishna is always breaking the predictable. Because love is unpredictable. Love, Rupa Goswami says, Ahili Bhagati Premna Svabhavapati Lavabit. Love moves in a crooked way like a snake, which means it's not on a straight line. It's not predictable. You don't know what will happen next. And that's what keeps the whole thing exciting. I don't know what will happen next. If I will know every single step of the sequence, oh, Krishna will do this, then he will do that, then he will do that. So boring. So boring. So, so anyhow, Krishna is ready to accept us as we are, for who we are. So probably the hardest question is, am I ready to accept myself for who I am? Again, going back to vulnerability. Or I'm ready to give myself to Krishna as I am? Or I'm still waiting for some imagined degree of perfection for that to happen? Krishna is saying, start now. But I'm imperfect. I love you. Despite imperfect, that's real love. Real love is not waiting for perfection. That's conditional love. Unconditional love is, I love you. And what about my imperfections? I love you. Sometimes it's too difficult for us to understand that because we're not accustomed to relate in those terms. So when we hear that sounds sometimes, as they say in English, too good to be true. It's so incredible that we may not believe it. So that's why we need also to have those experiences of unconditional love and unconditional acceptance. And we need to embody that for one another. It's not so much, okay, wait for Krishna to appear in your life and somehow give you that experience. A way that Krishna can appear in your life is through someone like each one of you and give someone else experience of unconditional love. Because of course, if someone never experienced unconditional love in this life, I can talk about unconditional love for days and they will say like, what's that nonsense? I don't know what you're talking about. I have no experience. So, but when they have an experience, it's impossible to deny it. So that's why we need each other to, to embody that, to represent Krishna in each other's life, to represent how Krishna feels for us, how Krishna sees us. We have to become ambassadors of that for each other. We have to remind our brothers and sisters how Krishna is loving you unconditionally at this very moment by how I'm loving you unconditionally at this very moment. And when that person says, why are you loving me in this way? Because Krishna loves you in this way. Way more, but trying to represent that somehow. So in that way we can gradually, connect to each other. I have a few words here that I would like to share with you. Just 2-3 sentences from one of my most inspiring teachers, Srila Bhakti Rakshakshir Dev Goswami Maharaj. He was a very dear brother and friend of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada himself considered him as his Siksha Guru and so many other beautiful things. So these are a few words that he shared once on how Krishna is not only loving us, but he's actively engaged in a search for each one of us. He has one book called Loving Search for the Lost Servant. So I'll share. There are 3 sentences. Maybe it works if you close your eyes and try to concentrate on these words and try to understand that these are about you, each one of you. So he says, the Lord's search for his lost servants is a loving search. It is not ordinary, but from the heart. And the Lord's heart is not an ordinary heart. Who can estimate what type of search he is engaged in? It is a mad search, an urgent campaign. Although he is full in all respects, still he feels pangs of separation from every one of us, however small we may be. In spite of his supreme position, he has room for us in a corner of his loving heart. That is the nature of the infinite. So just a reminder of how the divine is feeling for us in this precise moment. That can, again, give enough safety to be vulnerable and to open our hearts to someone who is so lovingly interested in us. And again, try to express that to one another, reflect back to one another, mirror that back to one another. We need this mirroring. That's a healthy mirroring. Of course, sometimes we don't want mirrors. We want, as this story in India, they say some person opened a shop selling mirrors. It's like a way of saying a parable. I spoke a shop selling mirrors, and I went bankrupt. Nobody bought one single mirror. I changed the product and I started selling masks. I became billionaire. Right? We all prefer masks. We don't want the mirror that is reflecting. So vulnerability is important because vulnerability keeps the mirror in place. And it's when we mirror each other also, we are reflecting back not only our potential, our beauty, of course, our wounds, whatever unresolved. And it's a healthy exercise that creates connection and bonding. As yesterday we were introducing each other, and I could see many of you were, someone was sharing their own journey or experience, and many of the rest were like, yeah, that person is articulating what my heart is feeling right now. Oh, I'm not alone. We are in the same team together, so to say. So it's a togetherness. Sankirtan, that's the main practice that Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya in our tradition established, Sankirtan. So Sankirtan is a collective engagement. And it's not just a musical thing. It's collective praising the Lord all together. We need each other to do that. You cannot do Sankirtan by yourself. By yourself, to make a play of words, you can do Sankirtan. Which is great, no problem. Sankirtan, you prick your cartel. But Sankirtan, we need each other. So that's the genius of Mahaprabhu. The very word Sankirtan implies the idea you cannot do it by yourself. You need each other. You need this sacred mirroring and vulnerability. And interestingly, when he speaks about Sankirtan in the Sikshastakam, in the first verse, he says, Chetudarpana Marjanam. He uses this analogy of the mirror in the context of the effects of Sankirtan. Cleaning, not only cleaning the mirror, but also in Sankirtan, in collective praise, we mirror each other. We reflect back on each other constantly. We support each other on the journey. We see ourselves in the other person. We are received by the other. We are being received by the other person. So we are almost finishing, but I'd like to invite you to something. I hope I built enough safe place for you to trust me. And also because I'm saying words, and hopefully those words are creating some experience, but also we want to make all this very experiential, right? It's not just here about gathering information, right? Gathering theory, but also having deep experiences that confirm whatever we are talking about. So I like to invite you to do a very simple exercise that has been done in many places and traditions. And it's a gazing exercise, which basically entails we will put you in pairs. Trust me. I mean, nobody's forced to do it. Of course, I don't want to feel anyone obliged in that, but I think it's and I've been doing that always, and it's beautiful. And it's basically sitting with another person and looking that person in their eyes. And of course, being looked by that person. So it's a mutual giving and receiving, right? And as we know, when we look someone at their eyes, as they say, the eyes, at least in Spanish, they have this saying, los ojos son las ventanas del alma.
In English too.
Let's keep it in Spanish, mystery. No, sorry. Eyes are the windows of the soul. So when we really, I mean, in that exercise, you are being seen by that person, really, for who you are. And you are seeing that person for who they are. So it's a moment of mutual giving and receiving. No? And vulnerability, of course, but hopefully in a safe space. I mean, I don't want to say we are in a safe space, I cannot tell you that, but I hope we have built since yesterday to today enough trust to open ourselves to the experience. So, are you joining? A few minutes. It may feel subjectively like 3 centuries, but I won't keep you there like 3 hours. So, and then we will return and we will speak for a few more minutes just to conclude. And we'll pause the recording. Okay. We are back somehow. Simple exercise, as you can see, very powerful, hopefully. Always available at hand. We don't need any particular technology, but just presence and openness and connection. And we can have a very real experience of what we are talking about, how touching and transforming and even important in case we felt scared at times or something. Also, it's good to be aware of the things that get in the way, with self-compassion. But also, generally what happens is in the beginning, many people feel nervous just when I'm starting to suggest we will do that. It's like, oh no, the gazing again.
Especially because we couldn't choose the person.
Especially that. And Maharaj will pick who will be the, oh my God. Oh, it's getting worse and worse, right? And then in the first seconds of the practice, still maybe a little bit like, oh, especially if you never did it. But eventually we are honest, as I trust we all are. All these masks start to fall apart because something more important is happening, which is deep connection. And we become aware of how quickly we can connect with the other person, even if we don't know who the person is, what's their name, all this technical information that sometimes we take us. That means knowing a person. That doesn't mean knowing a person. In 2-minute gazing, you know a person more than you may have known someone in decades. We take proper time and attention. So we can put away all this unnecessary masking, as we were saying today. In our tradition, 2 more thoughts to conclude, and then I will invite for questions. I have a few minutes. But in our particular tradition, we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our main book, and the Bhagavatam starts saying, Dharma pravito kaitavo, which basically says, in this book will reject all cheating in the name of religion. So we don't want to cheat ourselves in the name of religion. We don't need to force ourselves that we are not lovable. We need, on the contrary, to get together to confirm to each other how we are already being loved, how we are already being accepted, how we can be vulnerable in a safe space and be empowered because of that. This Christian mystic, Saint John of the Cross, I also include that in Radical Personalism. He says, I really like that line. It's very simple, but he will say, love what God sees in you. Love what God sees in you.
Can't even see that in ourselves. So how do we love it?
So that's why we are talking about this. How is Krishna seeing us? What's his darshan? And he sees in us a lovable unit, someone amazing. So we learn to, and again, as you say, Kamania, sometimes we are not being able to see that. And that's why we need to be reflected by, for example, the gazing we say we did, and we can be seen by someone who is seeing us from a place of love and acceptance, and we can gradually convince ourselves, oh, I'm lovable. I'm not unlovable. Because sometimes that's the false myth. I'm unlovable. So only when you realize that you are lovable, to make a play of words in English, you can be love-able. The word lovable is love-able. So I cannot love anyone if I don't think that that I can be loved, or that I'm lovable. Follow my point? If I think I'm absolutely unlovable, I will never dare to love, because I won't think myself worthy of love. So we need to dethrone that to begin with. And that's how so important to be properly vulnerable in a healthy space, and be reminded, mirrored back by other brothers and sisters. You are lovable. No? Krishna loves you. There's no problem. So anyhow, some thoughts I want to share with you today on vulnerability and honesty in relationships. Hopefully we can carry this around these days in how we relate to each other, how we discover new friendships and connections to one another, how we learn to listen with compassion, to speak with sincerity, and to see how every single relationship is mirroring back of the divine relationship, how our connection with Krishna, with Radha and Krishna also begins, how we relate to each other. It's not entirely disconnected one thing from the other. And again, to find beauty in that vulnerability, in that fragility. There's one poem I want to share with you. Now it comes to my mind. These days I've been reading a beautiful book by Daniel Ladinsky. It's called Love Poems from God. I met Daniel a few months ago. We became friends with him. He sang my book. He says, so sweet, so sweet. Yesterday we were here in Madhur Ashtakam. Adharam, Madhuram. So sweet, so sweet.
It's one of the best.
Yeah, beautiful book. So it's a compilation of 12 different saints, and he's rendering his poems in his own words. Saint Francis, Tukaram, Mirabai, Saint John of the Cross, from different traditions, Hafiz, Rumi. So one poem, very long one. I'll share with you. Title is, you can see? Vulnerable. Well, vulnerable. It's from Saint Catherine of Siena. She's a Christian saint. Just 4 lines, simple but important ones. She says, vulnerable we are like an infant. We need each other's care or we will suffer. That's it. Like, I felt it kind of made full circle to what we were sharing today, given the example of the baby, the infant being vulnerable, being so attractive at the same time, but being so needy of protection. So we are equally vulnerable. Difference between us and a baby is that we learn to put so many masks in between. So we are hiding the vulnerability, but we are as vulnerable as that baby in so many ways. So we need each other's care. Remember the example I gave yesterday? I will give it one more time for the ones who are coming today for the first time. I'm closing with the idea of sadhu sangha. We began today's lecture speaking about what sadhu sangha. Yesterday, someone asked Srila Siddhar Maharaj, what's sadhu sangha? And he spoke about Napoleon. Remember? He gave an example of Napoleon and the Napoleon chair, where all his soldiers were standing in the snow at night. They didn't have a place to sleep. They could fall asleep at night. They could die in the snow. how to survive the night. He says, stand in a circle. And when I play the bell, he said, he didn't have the bell, but he says something. You all sit, like if you were to sit in a chair. And you will be sitting in the person back to you, and the person back to you, and the person back to you, and everyone will be the chair for everyone else. You will be sitting on someone, and someone will be sitting on you. You will be taking care of each other. In connection to the poem we just read. I'll read it one more time. Vulnerable we are, like an infant. We need each other's care, or we will suffer. So we need to receive care, protection, but we need also to give. That's always back and forth. So we're reciprocal. So I'm putting my sharing to rest from this side. So we have a few minutes. I don't know if we have a few minutes. If someone has any question. Yeah?
Krishna is eating.
Okay, we have 15 minutes, 20 minutes. She asked first, let's go to Katya. Yeah, I will go to.
Actually, I start from, because through your speech and through the last poem, I also connect that we are all vulnerable in origin, but as the baby facing original family, parents, grandparents, and further on maybe in adolescent and partner and devotees, they are actually had this experience of sharing vulnerability but not receiving that safe space. And I think those starting from the babies, mothers didn't have a space or time to listen, to accept the feelings. So we are accumulating all these bad experiences that is just shutting us down or bringing us to put the masks. And of course, it's very much related that if through these years I never been lovable or listened or understood, how the God can love me. So it's like such a process that requires such a energy and power and time, and people who actually truly can open their hearts and say, now I can see you, I can see your pain. And I think what community needs to train, we all have to be trained to be able to create a safe place. Because I think we originally ready for being vulnerable. We never in most of the cases receive that safe place to be open.
And
I'm just asking what a training process, like how to create the.
As you can, thank you for your words. Of course, I agree 108%. Sorry. Oh yeah. And maybe for next one we can use that one for the ones who have a question. Yeah. So Katya was kind of basically, in one sense, you were summarizing my lecture, which was great. You did a great job, so I really appreciate it because that reflects your own understanding of how much we are wired for vulnerability. It's already in our system, but sometimes in our early relationships, beginning as baby, as you say, with family and other relationships in time, including spiritual relationship with maybe shame, to we may be trying to be vulnerable, but that vulnerability is not honored, respected, understood. Maybe not with bad intention, just the other person doesn't have the tools to know what to do in that moment. So gradually we grew closing ourselves to that because we felt I was neglected, I was abused, I was not seen, and so on. So it becomes accumulated. That happened considerably in our life. Of course, now I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I am vulnerable and I have been hiding from that, what to do, how to do. So it may be a work, especially in spiritual communities, because sometimes it's interesting. I met people who maybe had a relatively healthy human experience as a child with their family, and they come to a spiritual community and they become traumatized there. Right? I mean, there are all the combinations. Those who come traumatized, and heal. Those who come traumatized become more traumatized in the spiritual community. Those who are not that traumatized and acquire new trauma. So all possible versions can happen. Let's be honest, right? It's not the idea. Of course, you go to a spiritual community hoping to heal, but many times also we approach spiritual circles unconsciously trying to escape from some things. And a spiritual community should be mature enough to detect that and guide us and helps us gradually to become aware of what we need to work on. So as for the question in itself, okay, how to implement this, how to create these safe spaces in communities for this to take place for each one of us, that's a very important question. And to be honest, that's one of the questions I receive the most when I'm traveling around the world. It's very, very interesting. I travel a lot and I visit lots of communities from different missions and gurus, and it's not just one group, it's very diverse. I love diversity. But in that diversity, I find very much this particular theme pattern, which is many devotees coming and say, "Oh Maharaj, we have the temple, we go for the artik, for the kirtan, for the class, for the prasad. It's beautiful, but we didn't have spaces for sharing with one another." As simple as that is, and again, it's not a complaint against the temple, it's just the expression of the need of the soul I need sacred space and time to be vulnerable, to be received, to receive another, and to build that sacred space, because it takes time. It's not just 5 minutes and we are all there. It's a building process. And I've heard that so many times, so many countries, different cultures, different Vaishnava association, but that's a constant. No? A need for spaces where people just sit, as we were doing yesterday, or as we are trying hopefully to do today and these days, sitting in a circle and just sharing how they're feeling. No? And that can begin with one other person again, because if we are very traumatized in terms of being vulnerable, and I suddenly put you in a circle with 25 people that you don't know, or who knows, that's too much. So that can begin with one person that we somehow know and trust a little bit. Now, in between all the trauma, the closing, oh, that person looks nice. I'll trust that. I will open 0.1%. Oh, it worked, right? I was seen, I was not neglected. Okay, next time 0.2%. I'm using these numbers to make the point that this is a gradual process, right? Till you get the full blooming openness, that may take years, and it's okay, no rush. But yeah, I personally think we need to have those spaces, and we shouldn't. What I tell these devotees is, don't wait for, how to say, a local authority to create those spaces for you. No? Take some initiative. If you feel that necessity is the mother of invention, so start to do it. No, it's not this. There's no magic. I mean, what we are doing these days, it's not complicated. It's just having the intention, having the openness, having relationship with people that you feel they are meaningful. And sometimes, organizing some sacred time and space. We are meeting this day, this time, to share our hearts with one another. Sometimes we need to craft the space a little bit, because if not, it may not happen like spontaneously here and there. So we need, okay, we're meeting this day, this time, this place with this group, intimate group. And I do that sometimes in some of the retreats I hold. We do this circle sharing with the talking stick. We did it recently in Austria, I remember. That was powerful. The talking stick was this size. I mean, I was not having any talking stick. I was like, should we use a talking stick? And there was like one branch, there's we are like, it's intimidating, but that needs to be the talking stick.
Like a danta.
It was something like that. And I put this talking stick. The first person took it, like, they started like this. Okay. But again, we need to have places where we feel it's safe to be myself, it's safe to express whatever I need to express, and everyone else is, again, educated, so to say, to honor that. So first, before even jumping into that, we may need to speak, like we are doing these days, about the need for listening, being present, not judging, unconditional regard, etc. Because for some people, these are even not concepts that exist in their radar. So we need to bring them rapidly into the picture and start even if it's with one more person, with your partner, with a friend, another friend, and normalizing these types of sharing, which actually were very normal in ancient cultures. I mean, in ancient cultures, you have every evening all the village will sit around the fire and share their day with one another. We no longer have that. That's why we need therapy, in one sense. I'm not against therapy. I'm just saying we need someone to listen to us. We need to feel that someone cares for me, I'm being seen by someone.
Isolation.
Yeah, so much isolation. So I mean, those are the main symptoms of this age, more and more, that we're here: isolation, loneliness, purposelessness, lack of purpose, lack of meaning. But we are growing more and more, in many ways, isolated from each other. What to speak with how technology gets in the way of all that. That's a whole separate retreat we need to do about it. But those things need to be brought in the picture because they create an effect, they create an influence. But I will say that, do not wait for magic to happen and suddenly someone is creating everything and okay, I'm just going. If I feel that need, that's Krishna himself calling me to create something in that regard. And something can be just meeting with someone else on the park and being honest. Intentionally meeting with that intention, bringing intentionality to the meeting. It's powerful. It's very powerful. I don't know if that helps. Thank you. Hopi Janani.
I have a question related to that exercise.
Okay.
I remember it was not like this time, but I remember years ago I did something like that, and I felt completely like falling into the other person. And my question is actually related to, because perceiving the other soul, or going in there, but also staying with myself. And where is this boundary, or what form of boundary? I had a discussion just before we had this meeting here about how much can I open without exhausting myself, or how much opening or closing is necessary or right, and where we meet in the middle, or
You are the psychotherapist here. You tell me.
yeah. I would like to know your answer.
Well, of course, my answer, which is one of my favorite replies to many questions, is it depends. Because you're asking me what's the right measure, but each one of us is different, so it's never the same. So as simple as this sounds, I think we need to internalize this idea that there's not one single way of doing things correctly. Because many times we carry this idea, this is the only way to be a devotee. This is the perfect way of doing this. This is the only way of doing that. There's no one only way of doing something correctly. It depends between people, and also it depends about in yourself, in the different stages, how you are, where you are today in this moment. So one has to pay attention to how you're feeling, right? Like if we went to the gazing exercise, you have to see what's going on inside of you. Again, it's inviting for connecting with how much do I think I can go, how much do I need to set the boundary, how much it's too much, how much is not too much. It's it's not something that we need. If I'm starting to feel, I don't know, exhausted or risky, I didn't clarify that before the exercise. Sorry, but I should have said it. Like, if it feels too much, feel free to stop it, of course, because I don't want anyone to feeling I'm entering a torture chamber or something like, all right, play that bell, finish the whole thing. But yeah, we need to pay attention to which are our capacities, because again, each one has a different one at every moment. So yeah.
Like just something to add there.
Yes.
Like, and it's not even just going there or going back,
Mhm.
but how to be there and here at the same time.
Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily need to be there and here at the same time. Also, again, there are no fixed rules in this exercise. Sometimes you may feel more inclined to see the other person, and sometimes you may feel more in need to enter into the place of being seen by the other person, or you may be taking turns. It's not like have to be in everywhere at every moment. No, it depends on that's part of the exercise. Allow whatever needs to take place at that moment. So while gazing at the other person, sometimes that's how it happens to me. Sometimes I'm more present to seeing the other person and receiving the other person, and sometimes I'm also becoming more aware of how I'm being received by the other person. And both things are happening at the same time, but we may have more awareness in one way, in another. Or as I say, sometimes we may be feeling fear of things that get in the way, and it's good that those things come to the surface. So we gain awareness of what's preventing the actual experience. So yeah, I won't say there's, again, one way for that to happen, but in a way that feels sustainable for you or for anyone, and in a way that feels healing for each one of us. That's the way, so to say. Okay, it's one, but Shamlal was raising his hand. We do one more, and we continue sharing these days.
I'll make mine very brief. It's really a comment.
Yes.
Chintamani and I have just become grandparents. We have
Congratulations.
a 2-year-old. And when we were talking about the vulnerability about the child, we are experiencing this very, very intensely. This baby knows a mask. Knows a mask. So it's brilliant. She will look into my eyes and she'll just look and look and look. She just holds me in her eyes.
Yeah.
And then at some point when we're playing or we're just having, just normal discourse or whatever, she'll do something that's not her. She'll do something that she's learning. She's learning this obviously from her parents, and I'm not judging them. I have no judgment on that, about that. But she's doing something that I know is not her. And she knows it. And as soon as I see that in her, she relaxes and she knows that I really love her. And it is just, being a grandfather, I had no idea what this was about. Down the river, we talked about last night, boom, there goes the rock, there goes another rock. You just take it and you take it, but you keep going. And what I just very briefly too is what I wanted to add about last night was that every single time Krishna was there, I left the most important part out. It was Krishna. And I tell you, I'm older than you and I'm not any wiser than you, but I'll tell you this, I've had more experience than you, at least in this life. And it hasn't been pleasant. It's been pretty darn rough. And a lot of it has been my own fault.
But Krishna has been there all the time.
All the time. Every single time.
Thank God. Thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, yeah.
And Chintamani, you want to add something? Yeah. We want to hear from both of the grandparents.
Actually, I was thinking about in learning this human masking behavior, it starts so early.
Yeah.
And it's not always, because there's something traumatic happening, it's because you get positive attention, these micro expressions, you make a cute face and everybody pays attention. And so you just keep adding on to this kind of masking process. But I was thinking as we get older, we actually begin to unmask. And I was thinking about there's not much difference between a preschool or nursery school and a nursing home, in terms of the openness and the vulnerability that we see, in both of these, So it's like a trajectory, and then that masking begins to dissolve. And I've, spent time in nursing homes when my father was in one, and I could look at so many of the other residents there, and there's this extraordinary vulnerability and trust that someone will take care of them and that they're okay, and that, and yeah, I just wanted to add that. I think that, it's not like we often think, well, maybe we keep our masks until our last day, but I've seen this unmasking process, and I feel it also in myself, that it's not so important to me what I project. I'm more comfortable with who I am, and I don't need the mask, same mask that I did hold on to when I was in my younger version. So I just want to say that.
Thank you. And yeah, I've always thought about, regarding your point, how the cycle of nature, so to speak, we were very much unmasked in our baby years, and then we learned more and more masking. But the nature of the cycle is when you start to grow older, even if you try to hold on the mask, the very system starts to collapse and forces you to be a child again under the care of someone else again. So the whole cycle tries to bring you back, acknowledges that probably in between your journey you put on a few masks. So now we enter into the phase of deconstruction. So naturally, ideally, before leaving this body, we go through certain things which invite us to voluntarily, or sometimes by force of circumstance, drop out those masks. So that's how the whole system, so to say, operates. So it's good to appreciate.
And it's often by force. I've seen
exactly.
You lose the body and you lose so much.
And the more we do not surrender to that and we insist on, the more we suffer, of course. So it's important to learn that submission is more like healthy acceptance of what's actually taking place and needs to take place.
What's so tragic is that in Western culture, elders are not revered. And so we miss exactly that. I see, and I even feel it in myself as I'm getting older. I've heard older people say that they feel they're becoming invisible, and I notice it, and I even feel it myself a little bit. And so, whereas in Eastern cultures, we revere our elders, so we would witness exactly what you were saying, but we're missing it. Just actually, we're missing out.
Yeah, it's part of the price of being in a culture where productivity becomes the main thing. So when you get older, you are useless to the system, so to say, quote unquote, right? But actually, if there are deep values, an elder actually becomes the main treasure of the community.
That's a different system.
Exactly. So we have to create our own system inside the system, because we cannot wait for postmodern society to appreciate elders and blah, blah. And at the same time, let's be honest, sometimes, as Shyam Lal was saying yesterday, of course, he was talking about himself. I'm not agreeing with what you said. What he said, I'm growing older, but I'm not growing wiser. I will take exception in his case, but in many cases, let's be honest, if you don't live your life with certain principles, becoming older is not synonymous with elder. No? So you just grow old, but doesn't mean you grow wise. So we, in ancient cultures also, and I'm not over romanticizing the past also, because sometimes we can easily fall into the past, everything was better, now everything is worse, not necessarily. But growing older is not the same as growing elder, right? So my point is, if I live a life where I was, to give an example, just like selfish and I didn't care for anyone, I cannot demand to be treated as a venerable elder in my old age because I haven't earned that. So probably there will come a reaction, not a chastisement, but just a natural reciprocity and result of how I live my life for me to realize, you follow my point? But I at the same time, I agree that even if I haven't lived my life in the way, I'm finishing, I get the message, and there, thank you. You see, it was a message. But even if we fail to live our life in the most virtuous way, and we reach older years, not necessarily elder, still we'll receive a chance with all that fragility and collapsing to gain the wisdom and to change the things we couldn't change. And if we take that chance, of course, that deserves to be acknowledged and praised. So, yeah. Okay, I won't extend more. We received the message, lunch is ready, so we'll go there. And later today in the evening lecture, we continue with the second topic. We will be talking about divine love in daily acts and how to integrate bhakti in everyday life. All related topics, all of them. And today also we are celebrating the disappearance day of Sri Haridas Thakur. So somehow we will connect the topic of today's celebration later. So thank you so much. Shri Radha Murlidhar ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sadhu Sangha ki jai, Gaur Premanand. Vanchakalpataru Vishak Sindhubhya Vachapati Tanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo